Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please come and take a seat, and let's hope that the sun goes gracefully down upon us very shortly, and we will get things moving in just a couple of minutes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to please take your seats. My notes say good evening, but I feel like I still want to say good afternoon. So, good afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Greg Mackey, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the History Trust of South Australia. It's not in that capacity, though, that I'm here this evening. I feel very privileged to be the Master of Ceremonies at this important launch, and we have a number of speakers to share something with us this evening before the commemoration service in the cathedral. So I would like to start by expressing on our collective behalf the acknowledgement that this land we meet on today is the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with country. I also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the living Kaurna people today. We pay respects to the cultural authority of all First Nations people visiting or attending from other places in South Australia and Australia. To begin proceedings for this official opening of the Adelaide Holocaust Museum and Andrew Steiner Education Centre, it's my great pleasure to invite John Lukowiak to offer a welcome to country and smoking ceremony.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you for doing acknowledgement to country. I'm going to do a welcome to country, and I can because my grandmother, Linda Walker, was a Ghana elder. I don't get a chance to talk much about my father, but I feel very honoured to be here this afternoon because my father was on a Polish concentration camp in Poland, and so I feel I have a connection. Yinamani, Mania, Nanga, Gunya, Morindi, Kumaku, Chuwila, Chilbruki. It's a few words in Ghana, my grandmother's language, meaning is a greeting, but it's also some words saying it's important that we walk together. Because when we walk together, what we learn about each other is that in actual fact, as human beings, we've got more in common than differences. Also talk a little bit about Chilbruki, and that's one of the traditional stories that travels through the Adelaide Plains area. Pope Francis recently has been talking about South America and talking about it's important for people to gain respect from the land, from the burn-off of the forest. And in order to do that is to learn some of the traditional stories from the country, and that will make us connected. I love to do a welcome because once I welcome you, then we have a duty of care to make sure you're safe and taken care of. Traditionally, Australia was broken up into many different countries, many different Aboriginal language groups. And my grandmother's people travelled the land. And I think they were called walkers because they walked the country. But when they would get from one part of the country to another, they just wouldn't barge in. They'd make a fire, make lots of smoke, and the next group would welcome them in. And what they would say is, don't go that way because that's women's area and that's their sacred place. Over there's a birthing area. There may be sorry business over here. Don't travel that way. But go this way because the water holes are full and there's plenty bush tucker. I like to just do a little welcome song that my grandfather taught me. His grandfather taught him and his grandfather taught him. It's a welcome song. It's also a healing song because we are spiritual people. Kummarna murde, 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 kummarna murde, 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 Arnango walya barla kuchu, arlaji, kummarna murde, murde, murde. Welcome. My friend, the governor's going to come up now, and I'm going to walk around and do some traditional smoking. The governor, I've spoken to him about it. We spent some time together in Cooper Pedy, and I introduced him to one of the Aboriginal boys I went to school with up there. And he was so happy the governor was in Cooper Pedy, and he was just saluting him all day. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you to each and every one of you for making time to be here this afternoon. I would like to take a moment to individually acknowledge some special guests and dignitaries. Now, everybody here is special, and just some people are more special than others. So I'd like to acknowledge His Excellency, the Honourable Hugh Van Ley AC, the Governor of South Australia, Temporary Ambassador of Israel to Australia, Dr. Tibor Shalev Schlosser, Deputy Premier, the Honourable Vicky Chapman, welcome, the Honourable John Gardner, Minister for Education, the Honourable Jing Lee, MLC, Assistant Minister to the Premier, Jane Stinson, MP, Shadow Minister for Multicultural Affairs, the Right Honourable the Lord Mayor of Adelaide, Sandy Verschoor, Archbishop of Adelaide, Patrick O'Regan, Rabbi Shoshana Kaminsky, Andrew Steiner, OAM, Nicola Zuckerman, Chair of the Board of the Adelaide Holocaust Museum and Andrew Steiner Education Centre, members of the Jewish Community Council of South Australia, and Stephen Gandel from Gandel Philanthropy. For me personally, it's been most inspiring to see Andrew Steiner's long journey of advocacy for this vision finally realised. The coalition of supporters that have rallied with generous donations, with grants, with the gifting of objects, and with great moral encouragement. I'd just like to address a couple of very quick housekeeping matters. If you've not done so already, please turn your mobile phones off. If you need the convenience of a toilet in the foyer of the cathedral, and refreshments will be served after the official proceedings. And of course, I appreciate that you are all observing COVID-safe guidelines. So without any further ado, it's great pleasure that, as John foreshadowed, that I invite His Excellency the Honourable Hugh Van Lay, Governor of South Australia, to launch the museum. His Excellency, of course, is renowned and respected, as you are, Excellency, for your passionate support of Adelaide's cultural and linguistically diverse community organisations. And it's an honour to have you here to officially launch Adelaide's Holocaust Museum and Steiner Education Centre. Your Excellency.
Thank you, Greg. To all the special guests who have been acknowledged by Greg Mackey, to all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're gathering here this evening, the Kaurna people, and we respect the spiritual relationship with the country. I thank John Lukowiak for his gracious welcome to the country. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm humbled and profoundly honored to be here with you all for the opening of the Adelaide Holocaust Museum and Andrew Steiner Education Centre. It will not be lost on any of those present that this opening takes place on the 82nd anniversary of Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. As we are all aware, on the 9th and the 10th of November 1938, synagogues across Nazi Germany were torched, and Jewish homes, schools, and businesses were vandalized. Many hundreds died, and in the aftermath, the morning after, 30,000 German Jewish men were arrested for the crime of being Jewish and sent to concentration camps where hundreds of them perished. Some Jewish women were also arrested and sent to local jails. Some of so many terrible elements of what become known as the Holocaust, as a shower. Ladies and gentlemen, the Holocaust is a stain on our world history. It must never be forgotten, both in and of itself. And so we can learn from it and be ready to speak up and to stand up again injustice, so such atrocities never happen again. This requires ongoing vigilance and education, because how can the young know unless they are taught? In fact, how can anyone know unless they are told? But also because, incredibly, there are those who would minimize the significance of the Holocaust or even deny that it happened at all. Inevitably, the passage of time means there are fewer living survivors to provide a testament to what happened in those awful times. We owe it to all those who suffered, to the 6 million who perished, and to those who survive, to ensure that their voices and their stories are heard, now and always. The voices of those who can no longer speak for themselves, the stories of the struggle against evil, the stories of inhumanity, but importantly, too, the stories of humanity and of how evil was overcome, at least for that time and at that place. Because the struggle goes on and must go on. The struggle against anti-Semitism, against Holocaust denial, against hate, against injustice. The struggle for compassion, for humanity, for dignity, for human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, this centre will ensure that we can educate and inspire South Australians with those voices and stories from the Shire. Tonight, we witness Andrew Steiner's a decade-long dream and determination become a reality. I have been privileged to know Andrew for about 30 years. He is always patient, but extraordinarily determined and hardworking. For years, he has generously shared his experience as a Holocaust survivor with thousands of South Australians in a gentle but convincing way. Andrew's quiet passion is not just for the past, but for ensuring compassion extends across all other injustices today and into the future. His quest has also ensured that people are aware of the plight of refugees and their survival after conflicts. As a former refugees ourselves, my wife Lan and I have witnessed brutality and oppression which forced us to flee Vietnam. We will be forever grateful for those who assisted us with kindness and friendship when we arrived here on this wonderful land. Having been strangers in the strange land ourselves, we deeply, deeply appreciate Andrew's vision and his passion for others. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this museum will be a constant reminder of the need for all humankind to speak up and to stand up when we witness injustice. We cannot stand by silently, because in Andrew's words, everybody is in a position to be an upstander instead of a bystander. I'm sure this center and Andrew's vision will be his and our beacon of light. Good evening and thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I'd now like to invite you to reveal the plaque, which will eventually find its way over to the Holocaust Museum. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me incredible pleasure to invite Andrew Steiner, OAM, to respond to His Excellency. It's Andrew's passion, as I mentioned before, and story of survival that's brought this project to fruition. For more than 30 years, Andrew has provided and self-funded education programs for South Australian students about the Holocaust, its relevance in today's world, and the lessons that can be learnt from that dark time in human history. Andrew and his late wife Helen set up a foundation to assist in the development of the Adelaide Holocaust Museum and Steiner Education Centre. So please, Andrew, would you like to come and say a few words?
Good afternoon to you all. First of all, let me thank you, John, for the wonderful welcome to the country, and I would like to express my respects to the traditional owners, Kaurna people of this land where we meet, the past, present and future elders. Also, I would like to thank Your Excellency for being our patron and for opening the museum. After all that wonderful very hard act to follow. You have been exceedingly too generous, so thank you very much. I'm somewhat overwhelmed. So, from the little boy of 11, 1944, October the 16th, standing with his hands raised, waiting to be executed, here I am, bearing witness, Hineni. My dream vision has been accomplished more eloquently than ever imagined. I'm very grateful to all who contributed towards this magnificent, monumental achievement. And what could be more powerful and poignant that On the 82nd anniversary, we show light against darkness. It's impossible to convey how elated I am by this museum and how enormously, deeply humbled by it all. The responsibility of remembrance belongs to us all. The Holocaust is the most researched historical event, yet it still remains inexplicable and beyond comprehension. How could the Holocaust happen? It happened because it was allowed to happen. Significantly, appeasement and indifference were major contributing factors. Almost all the world leaders were silent and indifferent. Their silence was perceived as tacit approval. Being unopposed gave the Nazis unlimited, absolute power to unleash their depravity, hatred, industrialized, brutal murder. During the Holocaust, art gave us hope and courage to survive. Art has a major role in remembrance and educating about the Holocaust. Eyewitnesses' drawings, paintings, writings, music lives on. All the guns have rusted away long ago. Art was used to educate when education was forbidden. Children's art are silent witnesses. The partisan song is still stirring and inspirational. It has been translated to 30 languages. Art is a very, very important part of the museum, and it comes closest in conveying the incomprehensible. Teaching of the Holocaust is an investment in the future for better humanity and citizenship. Whilst the national curriculum is helpful, it is inadequate. My hope is for compulsory Holocaust education. It will ensure young people can learn from the past and avoid other cataclysm. We aim to educate towards a fairer, better, and compassionate world. The museum will be a beacon of light, advocating compassion for all.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I'd now like to share with you a short virtual tour of the museum on the screen behind us for a couple of minutes. I believe the magic will happen.
The reality is that about 50% around the world have no idea about the Holocaust at all.
A lot of people think still that the Holocaust was actually a story only, but I can assure you it was not. It was truth.
I think it's important that people are aware of what has happened in the past, in the hope, and I do hope, that they learn from it.
I'm a Holocaust survivor who decided to bear witness, and I have been educating about the Holocaust. October 16th, 1944, we were lined up, hands raised, and waiting to be executed. Across the road, another Jewish-style house. Into our household, 14 people murdered on the spot.
My name is Leo Cohen, and I'm originally from Holland. I was originally picked up in 1943 by the Germans. Somebody put me in, and I was first in jail and later on in a Dutch concentration camp called Westerbork, and afterwards in Bergen-Belsen.
I was too young to know what was in the camp, and I was taken with my grandmother to Bergen-Belsen. They believe in about the October. I was found in my grandmother's dying arms on liberation. When they were going through the huts, my grandmother died actually on the 5th of May afterwards.
We were segregated, we were yellow stars. We only could go out during restricted times of the day, and so we were already outside the society.
In the end, there were so many people died in the camp that you had to step over the dead bodies. And I have to say that some people even were so hungry that they took some meat from the dead bodies to eat. That's honestly, that happened. I saw it with my own eyes.
I don't know how my grandmother kept me alive because there was very limited food. And there was a lot of sickness as well. Dysentery, diarrhea, and typhoid, and all sorts of things like that.
There are very few of us left now, so hence the importance and the urgency is greater.
It is valuable for people to know what happened during the war, because wars are terrible, and things what happened, especially during the last war, was so terrible and cost so many people's their lives, innocent people, that it is better for people to actually understand what really occurred.
Hatred and fighting is not the answer to the world at this moment, but it seems to be the only thing that people seem to know. I feel it's important that they learn the history of it and that they have a better understanding of what has happened, and hopefully can teach them, the children can learn from it that we need to get a better world.
The act of remembrance really belongs to us all. Whoever will visit the museum will gain an insight of man's dual capabilities. This, in fact, will be a beacon of light of the possibility within interfaith collaboration.
Very powerful. Our thanks to Brant Cumming, who created the virtual tour. In a minute, I'm going to invite you all to stand while Dr. Joseph Toltz recites the memorial prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, this prayer is recited worldwide at funerals after the unveiling of a tombstone and in synagogues at a Yizkor remembrance service during the Day of Atonement, the seventh day of Sukkot, Tabernacles, the last day of Pesach, Passover, and the second day of Shavuot, Pentecost. At the grave, the prayer mentions the specific name of the deceased. In the synagogue, there is a more general list. After the Shoah, a specific memorial prayer was written for the martyrs of Jewish people, known and unknown, who lie in unmarked graves and as ash in the soil of Europe. Let's never forget them, and may we continue to honour their memories as long as we have voice to do so. And now I invite you to be upstanding for the memorial prayer.
El male rachamim shochen b'marumim ametzei menucha nechona al kanafei השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את כל הנשמות של 6 מיליוני היהודים, אנשים, נשים וטף, חללי השואה באירופה, שנהרגו ושנשחטו, שנשרפו ושנספו על קידוש השם בידי המצרכים הגרמנים הנאצים ועוזריהם משאר העמים במחשמם. לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם ויעמדו וגורלם לקץ הימים ונאמר Amen.
Thank you. Please take your seats. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Ambassador Tibor Shalev Schlosser. Ambassador Schlosser was appointed Chargé d'Affaires and temporary ambassador for Israel to Australia, a special envoy for Holocaust issues. Dr. Schlosser speaks 6 languages. We're extremely lucky to have him with us for this occasion in English. Ambassador Schlosser.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you also, Joe, for this moving traditional welcome. Good evening and welcome, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am extremely moved to see so many of you, so many of us, on this very special evening. On this night, 82 years ago, the signal for the destruction of Jewish life in Europe was given in Nazi Germany as hundreds of synagogues, cemeteries, Jewish shops and businesses and other properties were senselessly razed. Jewish citizens were torn from their homes and arrested, and thousands of shopfront windows were broken and looted. The broken glass covered the streets of Germany. This was the Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. Recently, I had the great honor of bestowing the title of Righteous Among the Nations upon a Dutch-Australian couple, the late Jacob and Klaasje van der Haar, at a moving ceremony in the presence of their family at the Synagogue of Brisbane. The righteous among the nations are those thousands, actually 27,000, non-Jews who risked their lives to rescue Jews during the Holocaust, as the Van der Haars did for Jewish children Joseph Hokes and Sonia Peters in Nazi-occupied Holland. The Van der Haars became guardian angels for Joseph and Sonia, and if not for the esteemed efforts of the Van der Haars, it is almost certain that Joseph and Sonia would have shared the fate of the 1.5 million Jewish children, 6 million Jewish people, collectively murdered during the Holocaust. They constituted a third, 1/3 of the whole Jewish people at the time. None of these, dear friends, had guardian angels like the Van der Haar family. The Holocaust is not a tragedy from a distant past committed by some ancient or medieval bloodthirsty clan. It was carried out by a regime that emerged in a nation considered to be at the pinnacle of civilizations, a nation that produced philosophers, poets, and musicians such as Kant, Goethe, and Beethoven, and it happened only 75 years ago. The intention to wipe out the entire Jewish nation, each and every member of it, was well designed and engineered on a continental scale and carried out with industrial precision and efficiency. If the Nazis won the war, we can assume that not one Jewish person would have been left in Europe today. But they lost. Thanks also to the enormous efforts and sacrifices of Australian young soldiers who served among the Allied forces. Dear friends, Israel was founded on the ashes of the Holocaust, born on the 14th of May, 1948. The founders of Israel envisaged it as a safe haven for every persecuted Jew in the world. Israel has absorbed hundreds of thousands of Holocaust survivors, refugees from all over Europe. Had Israel been born only 10 years earlier, the Holocaust may have been prevented. The Holocaust Museum, which we open today, and those that are already open in Australia and worldwide, serve a very special mission. These are shrines, institutions for the commemoration and the remembrance of the darkest and the lowest chapter in human history and its victims. Each and every one of them. But this museum has also another extremely important mission to fulfill, namely the education of our younger generation today and in the future. Our present and future generations should be able to make the right choice. Without it, it may come to the extreme. They need to be able to choose the value of solidarity, democracy, humanity, and to reject racism, tyranny, anti-Semitism, intolerance, the same choices that the Dutch van der Haar family made 77 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to add my thanks and express my sincere appreciation to the initiative of individuals like Mr. Andrew Steiner. I just found out that we were born more or less on the same soil, somewhere in Europe, and our families went through the same horrible events and experiences. The federal government and the Gandel Philanthropy for their contribution to a Holocaust museum here in Adelaide. Just like the similar museums already existing in Sydney and in Melbourne and the future museum in Brisbane, the Adelaide Holocaust Museum will be dedicated to commemoration, education, solidarity, and for a mutual respect of the diversity in our democratic societies. I know that there are many others that have taken part in this important project, and I thank you for all your support and contribution, noting in particular the critical role of the Catholic Archdiocese. On this note, and in view of the recent, very promising peace agreements in the Middle East between Israel and Bahrain and Sudan and the United Arab Emirates, I greet you all this evening with the Hebrew word for peace, shalom. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Schlosser. In my role as CEO with the History Trust, as I mentioned earlier, it's also my great privilege to serve South Australia's Minister for Education, the Honourable John Gardner MP. And I'm delighted this evening to invite Minister Gardner to say a few words on behalf of the Government of South Australia.
Thank you very much, Greg, and I think this is an evening which everybody who is here will remember for a very long time. It's a significant moment for Adelaide and for South Australia. John, thank you very much for the welcome to your country. In NAIDOC Week, it is worth saying again, this is Kaurna land, and it always was and it always will be Kaurna land. And I know that everybody in this gathering tonight recognises the important relationship that the Kaurna people have with this country. Distinguished guests all, I recognise particularly His Excellency, the Honourable Hugh van Ley, Governor of South Australia, and His Excellency Ambassador Schlosser. Thank you so much. The Holocaust Museum and Steiner Education Centre has been born of the efforts of so many South Australians and so many stakeholders in this community that it is impossible in the brief time we have tonight to recognise all of them. But it is born of partnerships, and I want to reflect a little on that, and in particular the importance of the development of this museum for the education of our young people here in South Australia. Andrew Steiner, and particularly Andrew Steiner, but Andrew Steiner and others have for decades been talking to our young people about the Holocaust. And of course the germ of an idea for this museum has to be mentioned, starts with Andrew, but it has been the contribution of so many people, not just in South Australia's Jewish community, but particularly in South Australia's Jewish community, that has helped us reach this point. The South Australian Government, through the Department for Education and the History Trust of South Australia, has been honoured to have the opportunity to contribute $100,000 over the last 2.5 years to help us reach this point. The philanthropists and the board who have given their money and their time, the experts, including curators from the History Trusts, who have lent their expertise to ensuring that the physical situation that we now have in this museum is of such appropriate, high quality, high calibre level that anybody entering the museum will not be able to be helped but be touched by the stories that the displays tell, has been significant. The Catholic Church, whose contribution of the land, of the building within which the museum sits, has been so important for the enablement of the development over the last years of the displays. All of these groups, their work has been significant, and I tell you what, it has just begun. What this museum means for our community and for our young people in South Australia is quite profound. The Governor said earlier that the Holocaust is a stain on the world. Andrew Steiner said that the remembrance of the Holocaust is the responsibility of us all. The responsibility to remember, as the Ambassador said, that the Holocaust came about in a democratic nation. It came about, as evil tends to, because a community was sold on the idea that one group of humans were less than human. They were convinced of this. And the idea, the germ of an idea that any human is less in their humanity than the broad total group cannot be allowed to stand. The remembrance of a Holocaust is a totemic moment for every community in the world, to remember that we are all in our humanity the children of God. And we have a duty to our young people in particular to ensure that they are given the opportunity to learn about this moment in our world's history on which so much shame rests. The Holocaust is not the only genocide that has been perpetrated on a minority group in history, but it remains unique in its industrial, brutal scale by a government against a people. It is extraordinary, the Jewish people's singular persecution throughout not just the 20th century and the Holocaust, but over hundreds and thousands of years in so many environments. It is extraordinary, as the Governor alluded, that there remain people in this world today, there remain governments in this world today, there remain people in this country, unfortunately, who deny the existence of the historical event of the Holocaust. And there are others who would seek to downplay its significance in our community. The South Australian Government has contributed some funding, but our most significant role is yet to come as we work with the Holocaust Museum and the Steiner Education Centre and our schools and the Catholic education sector and the independent schools in South Australia to facilitate the teaching of intercultural understanding, the teaching of ethics, which so underlie the Australian curriculum, but we use this centre to underlie the teaching of that for our young people in South Australia to come. I tell you, I thought that the work that had been done when I visited the Holocaust Museum about a few months ago had been significant, and the work done by Kathy Bokic and her team was amazing, and it is. And when we visited, we're pretty proud of where the centre had come to. But when Josh Frydenberg announced a further $2.5 million, and I know that he's in James Stevens' office in Parliament House tonight, watching this event on a live stream, that is going to take the physical look of the centre right to that next level and enable the telling of the stories of our Holocaust survivors here in South Australia to be told that much better in the years ahead, to members of our community, to students in our schools. I thank them for their work and their contribution. The work that we have to do in our schools is profound. As we get the Australian curriculum, this is an asset to our teachers and to our principals across South Australia to enable them to do their work in teaching history and social services, or the other aspects of the Australian curriculum. Enables them to help our children become more ethical, to have a better intercultural understanding. It enables them to understand the history of the Holocaust. Andrew Steiner said it is all of our responsibility to remember the Holocaust. It is our responsibility to the 6 million who perished. It is our responsibility to the millions more, such as Andrew and the other survivors who survived. It is our responsibility to the Jewish community who still suffer persecution. It is our responsibility to all communities who suffer persecution. And it is our duty to help our young people, the next generation, to live better and more peaceful lives in the years ahead. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you, Minister. Love your work. Now, I would like to introduce the Beit Shalom Choir, who've been described as, quote, small in number but mighty in sound and musicianship. The choir will sing 2 Shoah songs, Unter dein weißer Stern and Magst die Eigelek, if my pronunciation is bad, forgive me, arranged and conducted by Dr. Joseph Toltz, with music composed by A. Brudno and D. Begelman, and poems by A. Sutzkever and Y. Spiegel. I introduced Dr. Toltz earlier, and I didn't mention, however, at that point that indeed he is a researcher and administrator at the University of Sydney. He was co-investigator on performing the Jewish Archive between 2014 and 2018. In 2017, Joseph directed the festival Out of the Shadows, Rediscovering Jewish Music and Theatre in Sydney. He's a former fellow at the Mandel Centre for Advanced Holocaust Studies in the United States Holocaust Museum. And he's currently co-authoring a book on the first collection of Holocaust songs, working with the exile Arte Zentrum on the Austrian Jewish refugee composer Wilhelm Gross. In 2021, Joseph hopes to bring a child survivor of the Lodz ghetto back to the city of her birth to share musical memories at that time. Dr. Toltz, I hand it over to you.
und preisen darum. So kommst du dein Sieg, das Deckel in der Hand, das Eis in Asch und Brand. Wir losen sie ein Lied suchen Krieg.
Die Welt hat Gott vermacht, und umhängt du his Nacht. Sie wart auf uns, mit Freude und mit Schwer. Wir stehen betet euch, in schwere, schwere Scheu, und wissen nicht, wohin's wird der Weg.
Neben Jürgen, neben schöne Treppen häufen mit Gewalt. Häng ich an der Platzenströme und ich sing zu dir als euch. Und mit deiner weißen Stirn streck zu mir dein weiße Hand. Meine Wette, seine Tränen willen ruhen in dein Hand. Meine Wette, seine Tränen willen ruhen in dein Hand.
Many thanks, Joseph Toltz and the Bet Shalom Choir. It's now my great privilege to introduce the Catholic Archbishop of Adelaide, Patrick O'Regan. Archbishop O'Regan spent his early years as an ordained priest in regional New South Wales, and after pursuing higher studies in France in 1994 and again in 2002, he returned to the Diocese of Bathurst in 2003. Father O'Regan became diocesan chancellor, and between 2010 and 2014 was Dean of the Cathedral and appointed Vicar General in 2012. In December 2014, he was appointed the 9th Bishop of Sale by Pope Francis. Announced that Bishop O'Regan would move to the Archdiocese of Adelaide as its 9th Archbishop on the 19th of March 2020. Archbishop O'Regan has a very special interest in music and education, so you're among friends here. And along with the entire Catholic Archdiocese of Adelaide, has been incredibly generous in their support for this project. Archbishop O'Regan.
Thank you very much, Greg, for your welcome, and John for your welcome to country. Distinguished guests, the human spirit is especially touched by symbol and, as Andrew reminded us, by art. It's part of something that we treasure so deeply. Little wonder then, in 1988, when the World Expo came to Brisbane, one of the most visited pavilions was that of the United Nations, because it was showing on a continuous loop that wonderful image of the Earth suspended in mid-space, taken as part of the Apollo program. And it had a simple caption at the bottom: how can something round have any sides? It was a powerful image in an increasingly powerful image-conscious world that spoke of the necessary solidarity and compassion of the human heart. It was an insistent call that we are always better at that. We are called to be part of that. The symbolism that we share tonight is also that important, because as the scriptures keep reminding us, one of the most often used words in the scripture is remember. And we are a people who remember. Part of our musical tradition is to sing the praise of God. A deeper tradition is also learning, as we must, to sing our lament. Our lament doesn't end in sorrow, but when we sing our lament, we end in hope. It's my privilege, only just being here for 5 minutes, to build on the extraordinary work of many others, and it's a very proud moment for the Archdiocese of Adelaide to make a small contribution to a wonderful work. Congratulations to all involved, and may God, who listens to the cry of the poor, listen deeply in our humble struggle to be people of compassion, of hope, and of solidarity. Thank you.
Our next guest speaker, Stephen Gandel, is here today on behalf of his grandparents, John and Pauline Gandel. Gandel Philanthropy is one of Australia's largest independent family philanthropic funds. John Gandel AC and Pauline Gandel AC are actively engaged in the philanthropic work of their foundation and are universally recognised for their generosity and commitment to both Jewish and other causes. Stephen.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land in which we meet, the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. My name, as you heard, is Stephen Gandel, and I'm here representing my grandparents, John and Pauline Gandel, who unfortunately are unable to join this event due to COVID restrictions. I know they would have been more than keen to be here in person, as preserving and protecting the memory of the Holocaust is one of their greatest passions. But, as we all know, certain state borders remain closed, and as myself, my wife and my children are the only Sydney-based Gandels, it's an honour and a privilege to be representing both our family and Gandel Philanthropy this evening. Our family, and indeed all generations of the Gandel family, are passionate about this cause, and we continue to invest not only funding, but also our time, our voice, energy and commitment into it. We principally achieve this through the Gandel Holocaust Studies program for Australian educators, a professional development program which equips secondary school teachers with best practice methods to teach about the Holocaust in their classrooms. In the 11 years of the Gandel program to date, some 350 teachers have been trained, including 25 from South Australia, and they are reaching literally thousands of students every year with messages of tragedy, humanity, sacrifice and inspiration. I understand some SA Gandel alumni are also connected to the Adelaide Holocaust Museum, helping with your programs and activities. Gandel Philanthropy is very excited and gratified to see the successful augmentation of the program from its classroom base into the general public for all ages to learn and experience. We of course also supported the establishment of this very museum, and Gandel Philanthropy proudly provided a leadership grant in the very early days to help kickstart the process of raising funds. The fact that this project has been receiving such strong support from the Archdiocese, the South Australian Government and more recently the Federal Government shows that this was indeed a shrewd and visionary philanthropic investment. But to create a long-lasting and effective change, we know what is really needed: systemic policy change at the government level. Last year, Gandel Philanthropy joined forces with key organisations to advocate directly with the Victorian Government to make Holocaust education mandatory in high schools. The success came in February this year when the government announced the adoption of that policy. We also helped ensure that the Education Department includes key Jewish and Holocaust organisations, and several Gandel graduates too, into the review and development of all Holocaust education materials, tools and lesson plans for Victorian teachers. This process is nearly over, and the end result is a teachers' portal with top quality guidance and information on how to holistically teach the Holocaust. This was indeed a great outcome, but there is more to be done. Holocaust education is mandated only in New South Wales since 2014, and now in Victoria as well. We plan to continue working proactively to encourage all states to follow Victoria's example, and we hope maybe South Australia could be the next state to do this. In closing, I would like to quickly thank some key people, above all the one and only Andrew Steiner, OAM. Andrew, you are truly an inspiration. I believe it is very much thanks to your vision, your persistence, and your gentle but powerful passion to the cause that we are all here today. I wish to thank all the other AHM SEC members and their partners, from the whole board to the team that worked tirelessly, the student designers, and most importantly, the invaluable support of the Archdiocese, as well as the SA and federal governments. Let me finish with words from my grandfather, John Gandel AC. Just the other day he said, and I quote, "It is probably more important than ever before that we remember the lessons of the Holocaust and that we educate our younger generations so that they are inspired to stand up for human rights, to learn to be driven to act in a positive way and not be a bystander." End quote. Through the Holocaust Museum in Adelaide and the Steiner Education Centre, the young people of South Australia now have that chance to be inspired. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I know you'll be eager to know that we're almost to the end of our official proceedings, and there will be light refreshments available afterwards. But now we have a Year 8 Adelaide High School student, Elia Limeref, who's here this evening to read an extract from Anne Frank's diary. Elia is a descendant of two Polish Jewish Holocaust survivors. Her grandfather was born in Austria in a displaced persons camp. Her great-grandmother, Blanka Silberstein, was born and raised in Krakow, Poland. Blanka is the only known survivor of 5 generations of her family. Elia's great-grandfather, Henry Silberstein, was also born and raised in Krakow and lost his first wife and children in the Holocaust. He and Blanka met in their displaced persons camp and discovered that Henry knew Blanka's dad quite well through playing soccer. They had a son, Edmund, in a deportation camp in 1946, and he was Elia's grandfather and emigrated to New York in 1947. Henry died aged 52 in 1953, and Blanka passed away in 1995 at age 77. Please welcome Elia Limeref.
Dearest, Tuesday the 7th of March 1944. Dearest Kitty, when I think back to my life in 1942, it all seems so unreal. The Anne Frank who enjoyed that heavenly existence was completely different from the one who has grown wise within these walls. Yes, it was heavenly. 5 admirers on every street corner, 20 or so friends, the favourite of most of my teachers, spoilt rotten by father and mother, bags full of sweets and loads of pocket money. What more could anyone ask for? You're probably wondering how I could have charmed all those people. Peter says it's because I'm attractive, but that isn't it entirely. The teachers were amused and entertained by my clever answers, my witty remarks, my smiling face, and my critical mind. That's all I was, a terrible flirt, coquettish and amusing. I had a few plus points, which kept me in everyone's good graces. I was hard-working, honest and generous. I would never have refused anyone who had wanted to peek at my answers. I was magnanimous with my sweets, and I wasn't stuck up. Would all that admiration eventually have made me overconfident? It's a good thing that, at the height of my glory, I was suddenly plunged into reality. It took me more than a year to get used to doing without admiration. How did they see me at school? As the class comedian, the eternal ringleader, never in a bad mood, never a crybaby. Was it any wonder that everyone wanted to cycle to school with me or do me little favours? I look back at that Anne Frank as a pleasant, amusing, but superficial girl who has nothing to do with me. What did Peter say about me? Whenever I saw you, you were surrounded by a flock of girls and at least 2 boys. You were always laughing, and you were always the centre of attention. He was right. What remained of that Anne Frank? Oh, I haven't forgotten how to laugh or toss off a remark. I'm just as good, if not better, at holding people over the coals. And I can still flirt and be amusing, if I want to be. But there's the catch. I'd like to live that seemingly carefree and happy life for an evening, a few days a week. At the end of that week, I'd be exhausted and would be grateful for the first person to talk to me about something meaningful. I want friends, not admirers. People who respect me for my character and my deeds, not my flattering smile. The circle around me would be much smaller, but what does that matter, as long as they're sincere? In spite of everything, I wasn't altogether happy in 1942. I often felt I'd been deserted, but because I was on the go all day long, I didn't think about it. I enjoyed myself as much as I could, trying consciously or unconsciously to fill the void with jokes. Looking back, I realised that this period of my life has irrevocably come to a close. My happy-go-lucky, carefree school days are gone forever. I don't even miss them. I've outgrown them. I can no longer just be frivolous, since my serious side is always there. I see my life up until New Year 1944 as if I were looking through a powerful magnifying glass. When I was at home, my life was filled with sunshine. Then, in the middle of 1942, everything changed overnight. The quarrels, the accusations, I couldn't take it all in. I was caught off guard, and the only way I knew how to keep my bearings was to talk back. The first half of 1943 brought crying spells, loneliness, and the gradual realisation of my faults and shortcomings, which were numerous and seemed even more so. I filled the day with chatter, tried to draw Pim closer to me, and failed. This left me on my own to face the difficult task of improving myself so I wouldn't have to hear their reproaches, because they made me so despondent. The second half of the year was slightly better. I became a teenager and was treated more like a grown-up. I began to think about the things and to write stories, finally coming to the conclusion that the others no longer had anything to do with me. They had no right to swing back and forth like a pendulum on a clock. I wanted to change myself in my own way. I realised I could manage without my mother, completely and totally, and that hurt. But what affected me more was the realisation that I was never going to be able to confide in Father. I didn't trust anyone but myself. After New Year, the second big change occurred, my dream, through which I discovered my longing for a boy, not for a girlfriend, but for a boyfriend. I also discovered an inner happiness underneath my superficial and cheerful exterior. From time to time, I was quiet. Now I live only for Peter, since what happens to me in the future depends largely on him. I lie in bed at night after ending my prayers with the words, Ich danke dir für all das Gute und Liebe und Schön, and I am filled with joy. I think of going into hiding, my health and my whole being as das Gut, Peter's love, which is still so new and fragile, and which neither of us dares to say aloud, the future of happiness, and love as das Liebe. The world, nature, and the tremendous beauty of everything, all that splendour as dust shone. At such moments, I don't think about all the misery, but about the beauty that still remains. This is where Mother and I differ greatly. Her advice in the face of melancholy is, think about all the suffering in the world and be thankful you're not a part of it. My advice is, go outside, to the country, enjoy the sun and all nature has to offer. Go outside and try to recapture the happiness within yourself. Think of all the beauty in yourself and in everything around you and be happy. I don't think Mother's advice can be right, because what are you supposed to do if you become a part of the suffering? You'd be completely lost. On the contrary, beauty remains even in misfortune. If you look for it, you discover more and more happiness and regain your balance. A person whose happiness will make others happy. A person who has courage and faith will never die in misery. Yours, Anne M. Frank.
Thank you, Elia. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been very gracious, and I'm going to stretch that friendship just a little longer. For our final speaker this evening is Nicola Zuckerman, Chair of the Adelaide Holocaust and Steiner Education Centre Board of Management. Nicola brings a range of expertise to her role as Chair. She has a Bachelor of Law with honours obtained from the University of Adelaide, as well as a Bachelor of Arts with an honours degree in History. Nicola has worked as a lawyer with the Director of Public Prosecutions for several years and is a member of the Beit Shalom Synagogue. Nicola.
Thank you, John Lakoviak, for welcoming us this evening, and I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future. Thank you to His Excellency the Honourable Hugh Van Ley, AC Governor of South Australia, for formally launching AMSEC. Welcome Israeli Ambassador to Australia, Dr. Tibor Shalev Schlosser. Welcome to all our distinguished guests present here this evening and on the live stream. Ladies and gentlemen, as Chair of the Adelaide Holocaust Museum and Andrew Steiner Education Centre, I am filled with immense pride to be standing before you today for the opening of this most important museum. The development of the AMSEC has been a rewarding yet challenging journey for myself, my board, and the many others who have worked tirelessly to bring this project to fruition. The Museum and Education Centre has only been made possible from the vision, passion and commitment of one man, Andrew Steiner, OAM, child survivor of the Holocaust and committed Holocaust educator in Adelaide and regional South Australia for the past 30 years. Andrew and his late wife, Helen Tversky Steiner, established the Remember the Holocaust Compassion for All Foundation in 2015, which was the start of the movement to develop the AMSEC project. In 2017, I was honoured to be asked by Andrew to be a part of the development of a Holocaust Museum and Education Centre in Adelaide, a centre dedicated to the continuation of Andrew's legacy of delivering Holocaust education to South Australian schools. I accepted Andrew's invitation without hesitation because today more than ever it is crucial that the history of the Holocaust and the lessons to be learned from it are not lost. With the rise yet again of anti-Semitism, racism, prejudice and bigotry around the world, it is imperative that our future generations are educated about the Holocaust. As a society, we must ensure that our younger generations are equipped with the knowledge and understanding of the Holocaust and other genocides, that these atrocities were born out of hatred and fear and made possible by the indifference of so many. Combating anti-Semitism, racism, hatred and prejudice in all its forms is a virtue we hope to instil in all who visit the museum, particularly South Australian school students, so that they are inspired to lead the world, driven by the virtues of compassion, acceptance and kindness to all people. It was daunting to be establishing a Holocaust Museum and Education Centre in a city where the supporting Jewish population is very small, but the need for it was no different to larger cities. Adelaide has an undercurrent of anti-Semitism manifested in the targeting of young disenfranchised youth to neo-Nazi organisations, and Adelaide was the home of the infamous Holocaust denier Frederick Tobin. Some of the largest social media platforms in the world only weeks ago banned Holocaust denial content from being posted on their platforms, something that has sadly been allowed to pervade these sites for years, where they reached millions of users, including teenagers and young adults. AMSEC is a counterpoint to that type of activity and propaganda. Our purpose is to establish a sustainable, publicly accessible museum and education centre that provides programs about the history of the Holocaust from a South Australian perspective. Through both the museum and the education program it delivers, AMSEC will alter the future way visitors think and act, in particular high school students, in regards to anti-Semitism and any form of hate. A message of hope for the future in an increasingly turbulent world, and a respectful commemoration to the 6 million innocent lives lost. The development of this museum was made possible by the work and contributions of a great number of people and organisations, some of whom I'd like to acknowledge tonight. In 2017, an initial grant was received from the Jacob Frankel Trust, which allowed the trustees of the foundation to appoint project manager Sue Drenth to commence the work of fundraising and bringing the project to fruition. Since then, the Frankel Trust has continued to be a major funding partner of AMSEC, and we are extremely grateful to the administrators of the Trust for their ongoing support of our museum. Through Andrew's long association with the Adelaide Catholic Archdiocese, we received an initial boost by being offered a room in Fennessy House, the location in which the museum is now housed. As the AMSEC project got underway, that one room was converted into a whole of building exclusive use on a peppercorn lease arrangement. The support of the Catholic Archdiocese of Adelaide, and more recently the newly appointed Archbishop O'Regan, has been pivotal, and without which we would not be here tonight. We are so proud to be one of the first Holocaust museums to be partnered with and supported by the Catholic Church. I also thank Dale West, CEO Centre Care, for acting as liaison between AMSEC and the Archdiocesan Office and providing support to our organisation. I want to take a moment now to mention our project manager, Sue Drenth. Sue's work and dedication to the development of AMSEC cannot be overstated. Her tireless enthusiasm and her sharing of Andrew's vision showed no bounds. In 2.5 years, Sue raised in excess of $400,000 for the capital development and operations of the museum. In addition, she worked on every aspect of the museum's development, including the education pilot program and the design and curation of the permanent Holocaust exhibition. She is truly a force to be reckoned with, and we are indebted to her. It was through Sue that the project was brought to the attention of a great friend, Bill Appleby, CEO, Jewish Care Victoria. Through Bill, we were extremely fortunate to be introduced to and receive support from our principal and founding funding partner, Gandel Philanthropy, who in early 2018 made a lead pledge to kickstart our capital campaign on a dollar-for-dollar basis up to $100,000. It's true to say that without that initial pledge and the ongoing support of Vedran Drakulic, CEO, Gandel Philanthropy, in supporting our applications to other philanthropic organisations and private family donors, that the project simply would not have been possible. We could not be more pleased that John Gandel AC and Pauline Gandel AC and the trustees of Gandel Philanthropy shared our vision and supported the development and establishment of the AMSEC. And we are extremely grateful for their generosity and faith in this project, and we thank their grandson Stephen for attending on their behalf this evening. As a leader in Holocaust education, Gandel Philanthropy sees this museum and education centre as vital to ensure all people, particularly students, can learn about the Holocaust, its relevance today, and human rights in general. The grant from Gandel Philanthropy was used for the development and fit-out of the permanent Holocaust exhibition housed in Gallery 1, the Anne Frank Gallery. I would also like to express my heartfelt thanks to the other major donors to the capital development of the museum, the Erdey Foundation, Smorgon family, Sue Leffman and family, and the Marsden Schwartz Foundation for their significant financial contributions to the capital development of the museum. We also thank the numerous smaller donors who collectively have supported the project and assisted in the funding of the design and fit out of the museum. Every individual and organisation that has contributed to the development of this museum should feel immensely proud today. Notwithstanding the support to which I have referred, completing the fit out and development of the museum within budget has been an incredible challenge. We've been most fortunate to work with a local design and creative team, Iguana Creative, led by Jeff Fulford. His team are responsible for putting the walls of the museum up. Jeff and graphic designer Ollie Luckman's commitment to our vision has gone beyond expectations. Their willingness to work through every budgetary and building compliance challenge we faced ensured that the quality of the design and workmanship in the museum was uncompromised. The magnificent displays, imagery and historical content that is now up on the walls of the museum must also be attributed to the team who curated our permanent Holocaust exhibition. Initially, AMSEC was most fortunate in receiving the support of Dr. Avril Alba as curatorial consultant. With historians from the University of Adelaide, Drs. Vesna Drapik and Gareth Pritchard, who generously provided their time and scholarship for the content for the theme-based narrative. Dr. Alba oversaw the project to the point where Pauline Cockrell took over the role of curator from September 2019. The visual impact of the displays, panels and images on the walls of the Anne Frank Gallery are a testament to all who were involved in the curation of the permanent Holocaust exhibition. I also express my heartfelt thanks to Professor Conrad Quitt for his generosity in acting as peer reviewer for the content of the core exhibition. One of the most important aspects of AMSEC is the focus on local South Australian Holocaust survivors. It's been an incredibly moving experience to hear from survivors and receive contact from second and third generation family members who've generously shared their stories of survival and precious artefacts with our museum. I would like to thank Andrew Steiner, Eva Temple and the families of John Hirschfeld, Fred Steiner, Gary Rogers and Regina Zielinski for sharing their stories of survival, which are featured in the Leffman Gallery. Those who visit our museum will also have the privilege of viewing the artwork of the late Franz Kempf AM, who generously gifted AMSEC his 18-piece Holocaust series. These poignant and moving works are displayed in the Franz Kempf Memorial Gallery. I would also like to acknowledge the support we've received from both the Sydney Jewish Museum and the Jewish Holocaust Centre in Melbourne, particularly in relation to providing access to their education programs. Also to Rosalind Sugarman, Senior Curator at Sydney Jewish Museum, and Curator Shannon Biederman for their willingness to assist and provide some of the artefacts that are on loan and on display in the Anne Frank Gallery. The support of established Holocaust museums has been and continues to be vital as AMSEC commences operations and establishes collegiate relationships for a sustainable future. We thank the Memorial Scrolls Trust, London, for allowing AMSEC to be a custodian of a memorial Torah scroll. I would also like to thank the Migration Museum for providing objects on loan to enhance some of the local South Australian stories in our museum. One of the most significant aspects of this project was the development of the Holocaust Education Program. In late 2018, AMSEC received a $50,000 grant from the South Australian Department of Education for a pilot Holocaust schools education program to run from January to June 2019. The education program was developed by Gandel scholar and high school educator Karen Langman in conjunction with a community of practice of South Australian secondary school teachers, and then trialled across 13 schools in the metropolitan Adelaide, both public and independent. It was an outreach program. The program was independently evaluated with overwhelmingly positive results for the content, delivery and format. I'm most grateful to Karen for the time she committed to developing the education program and research contribution to curation of the permanent Holocaust exhibition for the museum. I would also like to thank Minister Gardner for his support of the Education Pilot Program and his continued support of the museum and Holocaust education. We look forward to welcoming students from South Australian schools to the museum and delivering our Holocaust education program to them in our purpose-built facility. I would also like to thank the Adelaide City Council for funding the development of a web app, a most important tool to supplement our education program. Much work has been done over the last 2.5 years behind the scenes to support AMSEC as a not-for-profit organisation in its infancy. Kathy White provided us with all the business support that Sue and the organisation required as we were just getting ourselves to our feet as an organisation. Thank you, Kathy, for your time and commitment to AMSEC. Jasmine Munn McDonald has assisted the organisation in both a volunteer and paid capacity. From afar in Melbourne, she has worked as our social media coordinator, done website updates and has provided much needed support to our centre director, Kathy Bakich. ANZSEC has been most gratefully assisted for the past 2.5 years with pro bono legal work and advice from Melbourne law firm Arnold Block Liebler and partner of the firm Joey Borenstein and lawyer Jessica Wills. From assistance with incorporating to the drafting of legal agreements, they have made themselves available to assist us for all our legal needs. I would also like to thank the History Trust for its ongoing support of AMSEC. The support has been on many levels, including small grants, advice, access to objects and the secondment of curator Pauline Cockrell to allow for her to work increased hours to complete the curation of the permanent Holocaust exhibition to schedule. CEO Greg Mackey has been a great friend to us through the development of the museum. He has not only been a professional support and an advocate of AMSEC to the state government, but has personally contributed to the capital development of the museum and led a campaign to raise funds which allowed us to transform the flooring of the entranceway to Fennessy House to its former heritage glory, a desperately needed transformation which we would otherwise not have been able to afford. I would like to now acknowledge the contribution and work of our inaugural Centre Director, Kathy Bakich. Kathy has been with AMSEC for a year now, having relocated from Sydney to take up the role. We're incredibly lucky to have someone of Kathy's experience, passion, skill and work ethic at the helm. Kathy came on board at a time when AMSEC was transitioning from project to operational museum, which was a challenging time for the organisation. That became more challenging with the advent of a global pandemic. However, throughout, Kathy, one of the most strategically minded people I've ever met, was able to transform challenges into positive outcomes and continue to build relationships and key partnerships that have been crucial to our survival, while at the same time ensure our readiness to open our doors in the face of timeline pressure and in the COVID environment. Her tireless work ethic and enthusiasm for AMSEC's mission has gotten us to this point. As a result of Kathy's efforts, we caught the sight of both the state and federal government. We were thrilled to receive a visit from Federal Treasurer Josh Frydenberg MP a few weeks ago, and his announcement of $2.5 million in capital development funding for the museum was frankly beyond expectations. We thank the Treasurer and Prime Minister Scott Morrison for their support of Holocaust remembrance and education here in South Australia and around the country. I would also like to thank all those who advocated for AMSEC to achieve this magnificent outcome: the Jewish Community Council of South Australia, Premier of South Australia Stephen Marshall and James Stevens MP, member for Sturt. Notwithstanding the significant funding we've received for capital development, we are still reliant on the generosity of donors to support the ongoing operations of the museum into the future. I would like to thank the Archdiocese for supporting tonight's launch, and especially to the events team Belinda Fussoy and Alexa Vozzo, whose support and expertise was invaluable in bringing this event together. And to all those who volunteered their time to support this launch and AMSEC operations into the future, thank you. Finally, you'll be glad to know I'm almost finished, to my board, Andrew Steiner, Ron and Jill Pyzak, Jill Noble, Heidi Limmerith and Tim Wilson. Thank you for supporting me in my role as Chair and for the passion, commitment and professional expertise you have each brought and which has ensured the integrity of our organisation. Thank you all for attending the launch this evening. We look forward to welcoming you all to the museum. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Beit Shalom Choir, who will be singing the Partisans song. Thank you.
Wir gehen mal ans den geht's den letzten Weg. Gott schillen bleien, verstellen bleie Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show. Das Wetter beugt an unser Trott, wir seinen do. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show. Das Wetter beugt an unser Trott, wir seinen do.
Von grünen Palmenland bis weißem Land von Schnee. Wir kommen um mit unser Bein, mit unser Weg. Und wo gefallen sie, so spritzt von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Hure, unser Mut. Und wo gefallen sie, so spritzt von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Hure, unser Mut.
Partisanim, die Nähe nach nu. Partisanim, die Nähe nach nu.
Morgens umgegilden uns den Heind, und der Nächte wird verschwören mit dem Feind. Nur euch versammeln wird die Sonne den Kajor, wie Aparosa geht das nicht von Dor zu Dor. Nur euch versammeln wird die Sonne den Kajor, wie Aparosa geht das nicht von Dor zu Dor.
Partisanim, die Nähe nach nu. Partisanim, die Nähe nach nu.
Das nicht geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Sie sind kein Lieder, auf euch läuft er frei. Das Wort davon zu wischen fallen die Gewählt. Das Lied gesungen mit Geganes in der Hand. Das Wort davon zu wischen fallen die Gewählt. Das Lied gesungen mit Geganes in der Hand.
Partisanim, in Nähe nach nu. Partisanim, in Nähe nach nu.
Einmal als du gehst den letzten Weg, und in den Neuen verstellen neue Tag. Kommen weg noch unser ausgedenkte Show, das Wetter beugt an unser Trott mit seinen Do. Kommen weg noch unser ausgedenkte Show, das Wetter beugt an unser Trott mit seinen Do.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, you've been very, very gracious and patient in the searing Adelaide springtime sunshine. Thankfully, a little shade has befallen us. You will be aware that the Shoah commemoration service was scheduled to commence at 7:30. Thanks to friends in high places, I can confirm that you haven't missed a beat yet, but I would invite you to, in thanking you for coming and rapping, invite you to help yourself to some refreshment. You are welcome to bring the bottled water into the cathedral if you are planning to stay for the service, but I would ask you please not to bring food inside. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. This is a great day to celebrate.
Everyone, just before we begin, I'd like to do a couple of housekeeping things. The first thing is just to let you know that the toilets are through these doors, across the lawn, up the steps into the cathedral hall, and then when you get into past those double doors, they're on the right. Very important. The second thing is to let you know that there will not be a function after the service due to the COVID restrictions. But now we're ready to go.
Lord, Lord, I call and call, listen to me. Lord, Lord, I call and call, listen to me. Give ear to my voice when I call, come quickly to me. Lord, Lord, I call and call, listen to me. Let my prayer rise like incense, my upraised hands like an evening sacrifice. Lord, Lord, I call and call, listen to me. O God, my Lord, in you I seek refuge. Do not leave me defenseless. Lord, Lord, I call and call, listen to me.
For the sin of silence, for the sin of indifference, for the secret complicity of the neutral, for the closing of borders, for the crime of indifference, for the sin of silence, for all that is done, for all that is not done. Let there be no forgetfulness before the throne of glory. Let there be remembrance within the human heart, and let there at last be forgiveness when your children, O God, may know reconciliation. The history of relations between Christians and Jews has been a tormented one, and the Christians among us deeply regret the errors and failures of so many sons and daughters of the Church. As we stand together tonight, all of us, children of the one God, we commit ourselves anew to peace in the world, in the hope that never again will such evil be perpetrated.
He
Tonight, we will use 6 candles of remembrance to represent the 6 million Jewish people whose lives were lost during the Shoah. The placing of each candle will be followed by a story, and after every second story, a prayer, sometimes spoken, sometimes sung. In memory of the 1.5 million innocent children whose lives were extinguished in the cruelest way, a candle is lit.
For Eva, my partner, to be here tonight to see this candle lit is a miracle. But before I give you a brief story of her life, we must never forget the brave men and women of the Allied forces who liberated Europe from the Nazis. Eva's a loving mum to her 2 sons and extended family living in this country today. Sadly, the start of her life is very different. Eva Temple, nee Bader, was born on the 30th of January 1944 in Bratislava, the capital city of Slovakia, then occupied German territory. She was the much longed for first child to professional parents Alexander, Shani and Frederica Fritzi Bader. Eva's father was a civil engineer in Bratislava and her mother a school teacher. Shani held an important post as a chief engineer with the railways and believed that he would be protected from deportation. However, to safeguard Eva's life, Shani and Fritzi had their new baby baptised as a Catholic. But it was not to be. When Eva was 8 months old, her parents were rounded up and deported. Baby Eva was left in the care of her paternal grandmother, Charlotte Bader, in a secret room where they remained in hiding until their discovery. They were sent to Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, where against possible odds, Eva's grandmother managed to keep baby Eva alive for 6 months in the camp until 15th April 1945, when the British liberated Bergen-Belsen. Amongst the 16,000 starving prisoners, Eva's were found in her grandmother's dying arms, and they were taken to the field hospital. Her grandmother died shortly after, on the 5th of May. Eva was severely malnourished and was transferred to the children's camp in Bergen-Belsen. Despite being over a year old, she was taken to be a 4-month-old baby. However, 2 compassionate and determined women were to change the course of Eva's young life. Firstly, British Red Cross nurse Enid Fernandez learned from a Polish female prisoner who had befriended Eva's grandmother that Eva had 2 uncles in England. Eva's father's brothers migrated in 1939 to escape the growing persecution of Jews. While the process of contacting uncles began, Eva was sent to Sweden through the United Nations Refugee Organisation and seemed destined for home children with physical and intellectual disabilities. A young Jewish family offered to take her in, and it was thought the dedication of her foster mother, Esther Schulman, that Eva began to flourish. Finally, in 1946, the Red Cross reunited 2-year-old Eva with her uncles in England, and she was flown to join her families. She was later legally adopted by Uncle Leslie Ladisla and Auntie Diti Edita. As a 20-year-old new qualified hairdresser, Eva migrated to Australia as a 10-pound pom, making her home in Adelaide through her aunt who had survived Auschwitz. Eva is one of the youngest Holocaust survivors in Australia and possibly the youngest survivor of Bergen-Belsen. She has 2 sons, a granddaughter. Eva has spent many piercing time together past and eventually discovering that her parents arrived in Auschwitz. Her father perished in Dachau concentration camp. However, there is still no trace of Eva's mother's fate. Eva has also lost an uncle and aunt and her grandparents to Holocaust. Eva regularly gives her time to speak to students about her life and experience as a Holocaust survivor. We sincerely thank Eva for her contribution and endorsement to the writing of this biography.
In memory of all the righteous among the nations who risked their lives to save and protect their Jewish brothers and sisters, a candle is lit.
Andrew, my father, was born Joseph André Steiner in Budapest on 12 June 1933 into a patriotic family who had lived in Hungary for generations. His father, Karoly, was a solicitor but, as events unfolded, was unable to practice law. At high school, Andrew was the only Jewish student in his class due to the numerus clausus, an anti-Semitic law that limited the number of Jews represented in higher education. From the beginning of World War II, Hungary's government allied with Germany, which occupied Hungary in March 1944. Andrew recalls seeing Nazi troops march past his home and his young Hungarian neighbour point at Andrew and shout that he was a dirty Jew. Following German occupation, anti-Jewish measures were rapidly imposed. In April 1944, each member of Andrew's family was forced to wear a yellow Star of David, and their home was turned into a yellow star house, shared with 3 other families. Andrew saw his adult family members taken away to labour camps or units attached to the military. Andrew, his sister Judith, and 5 cousins remained in their Yellow Star house under the care of their elderly Aunt Sarah until they were evicted as part of the deportation process. 11-year-old Andrew and 13-year-old Judith did not know the whereabouts of their parents. Sensing danger closing in, their aunt instructed them to remove their yellow stars and take a tram across Budapest to a newly established International Red Cross Children's Shelter. For Jews, removal of the yellow star and using public transport was punishable by death. During this perilous journey, Andrew saw columns of Jews being marched towards deportation centres. With directions from a local policeman, the two children arrived safely at a Red Cross refuge. In December 1944, Andrew's mother Margaret emerged from hiding with false identity papers. She took them to a hillside villa belonging to Andrew's godfather, where the caretaker gardener allowed them to stay, despite the danger to himself for sheltering Jews. Survival in hiding during the siege meant constant foraging for food and fuel for warmth. After liberation by the Soviet army, Andrew and his mother crossed the Buddha Hills through rubble, barricades and shootings to reunite with his father, returning that evening to Judith at the villa. Andrew's father was too weak to undertake the perilous walk back, but managed to join them several weeks later, hitching a ride in a Soviet army vehicle. 12 members of Andrew's extended family perished in the Holocaust. In 1948, the Steiner family made their new home in Adelaide. Andrew's first job at 15 was at G.R. Will's industrial glove factory alongside his mother and sister. In 1950, the family set up a successful leather goods factory. Andrew went on to work in the theatre, then took up wood carving in 1973, developing a successful career as a sculptor and stained glass artist. Optimism, hope, and love are major themes of Andrew's art. Since 1990, Andrew has provided education about the Holocaust to secondary and tertiary students, and in 2017 was awarded the Order of Australia for his service to visual arts and community history. The establishment of the Adelaide Holocaust Museum and the Andrew Steiner Education Centre in 2020 is the culmination of Andrew's life work towards a fairer, more just and compassionate world. We sincerely acknowledge the contribution and endorsement of Andrew Steiner in the writing of this biography.
For the recitation of the psalm, I would ask this side to be the left-hand side and that side to be the right-hand side. Hear me, O Lord, and act. I am poor and helpless. You are my God, watch over me, for I am loyal to you. Save me, your servant, for I trust in you. Hear my prayer, O Lord. Answer my cry for help. In my despair I plead, knowing you will act. Now, in memory of parents whose indescribable anguish of separation from the children was exceeded only by the torment of their murder, a candle is lit.
My name is Evelyn Trosty, daughter of John Hirschfeld, survivor of the Holocaust. No one's going to tell me what to do. It's my life and I decide what to do, was my father's words. Born Joachim Hirschfeld on the 9th of April 1920 in Halle, central Germany. My father John was the son of a tailor and one of 4 brothers. He was almost 13 when Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor and clearly remembers that day it started in January 1933 and how daily life changed following the Nazi takeover. John's school days were deeply traumatic. His teacher was a loyal member of the Nazi Party and a portrait of Hitler adorned with flowers hung at the back of the classroom. He taught his students the new German anthem with its grisly lyrics, "When Jewish blood splatters from the knife, all will be well." The teacher often told John that he had no interest in his education because John was Jewish, throwing his unmarked schoolwork into the rubbish bin. After Kristallnacht, the Crystal Night or Night of Broken Glass, in 1938, 18-year-old John fled to the Netherlands and worked on an agricultural camp with around 350 Jewish young people. But in 1942, the occupying forces of the German SS rounded up the majority of the workers and sent them by bus to Mauthausen concentration camp in Austria, where it is likely they all perished. Amongst them, John remembers he had good friends. However, John escaped that fate because of his experience working with livestock at the camp. That was my luck, he recalls. John was one of the 50 men selected to stay behind to look after the horses until it was their turn to be relocated. John dodged deportation a second time. On the morning the group was to report to the railway station to be relocated, he and a friend resisted the Gestapo's orders by jumping on a train heading south. They had little money, no tickets and no food. He was just 22 and his companion was 18. The gruelling and frightening journey that followed held the ever-present threat of capture by the Nazis, but they managed to reach the end of their journey unharmed. John gave some of the little money he had to a Dutch farmer to allow them to drive some cows through the forest to avoid detection by the Germans. They crossed the border into Belgium dressed as workmen. Continuing their journey into France, John recalls seeing Jewish people wearing the yellow Star of David on the streets of German-occupied Paris. Travelling south into Vichy, France, the unoccupied free zone, he used the last of his money to buy a train ticket to the French town of Evian on the shores of Lake Geneva. Here the pair crossed the border into Switzerland and safety. John spent the rest of the war in a Swiss refugee camp where he met Marie-Louise Angel, the woman who would become his wife. After the war, John and Marie-Louise migrated to Australia. John's 3 brothers also survived the Holocaust, making new homes in England, South America and Sweden. Their father died in Auschwitz, their mother at Theresienstadt. John ran a small goods business in Highmarsh and with his wife raised 4 children. John has 7 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren. On the 9th of April 2020, John showed again how he could survive adversity. With Adelaide family members practising social distancing, he celebrated his 100th birthday during the coronavirus pandemic in his eastern suburbs nursing home. He passed away almost 3 weeks later. We sincerely acknowledge the contribution and endorsement of John's daughter, Susie Beath, and family in the writing of this biography.
In memory of those saintly sages whose lives were dedicated to the teaching of the Torah and who went to their death with the cry of Shema Israel on their lips, a candle is lit.
I'm Jordan Lefman, great-grandson of Leopold and Frieda Lefman. My great-grandfather Leopold Lefman was born in Telstar, Germany in 1875. My great-grandmother Frieda, his wife, a twin, was born in Zeitz in 1880. The family of 3 children were Rudi, Carter, and the youngest child Siegfried, who was my grandfather. Leopold and Frieda lived a comfortable life with their children in Remscheid, an industrial city of about 100,000 residents in North Rhine, Germany. Leopold was a learned man, versed in Torah, and was able to conduct festival services in Remscheid when a rabbi or cantor was not available. They shielded their 3 children from the hardships of the post-depression times in Europe and gave them a wonderful home life, and family holidays were spent in the Black Forest region. Leopold and Frieda had a large home built in Remscheid. It contained a cellar with 4 to 5 rooms for coal and central heating, storage for apples, potatoes, wine jars of sauerkraut and foodstuffs. And upstairs, the bedrooms, library and large rooms for entertaining friends and visiting guests. Frieda had the use of an electrical bell system at her seat at the dining table, direct to the maid in the kitchen when service was required. Frequent visitors were dignitaries from musical and university backgrounds. With the coming to power of the Nazis, Jewish life went through an enormous upheaval. In 1935, Leopold and Frieda were forced to sell their home and property and move to a small flat in Chern. When their son Siegfried, who was studying medicine in Genoa, Italy, visited them in 1937, he was summoned to Gestapo headquarters, accused of being a traitor and banned forever from Germany. Jewish houses, shops, synagogues were besmirched with paint. Parks, benches, swimming pools carried signs saying, "Dogs and Jews not allowed." There was destruction, killing, legalised stealing of property, and of course the deportations. The end result of that frenzy was the Kristallnacht on 9th of November 1938. That infamous day will be remembered by all Jews for all time. It is believed that it was about that time that Leopold and Frieda were transported from Köln to Poland, but exact dates were never known. They had attended the wedding of Siegfried to Irene Meyer in March 1938 in Zurich, and that was the last time my grandfather Siegfried saw his parents. A letter was received from the Red Cross in December 1941 stating, "Parents write from Litzmannstadt ghetto in Watergau, Poland, and they are well and hope for a later reunion, but nothing more was ever heard." Documentation from Yad Vashem in Jerusalem verifies that Frieda and Leopold were transported from Litzmannstadt ghetto in Poland on 22nd of October 1941, 220 kilometres north to Chelmno extermination camp west of Warsaw, where they were both murdered on the 5th of May 1942. 2 brass pavers have been embedded in the pavement outside my great-grandparents' home at 38 Wilhelmstrasse, Remscheid. Their blessed memory will live on in our lives through the dedicated Lefman Gallery in the Adelaide Holocaust Museum and Andrew Steiner Education Centre. We sincerely acknowledge the contribution and endorsement of the Lefman family in the writing of this biography.
Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I need nothing more. In green pastures you give me rest. Beside restful waters you lead me, you refresh my spirit. You guide me along sure paths, you are true to your name. Though I should walk in death's dark valley, I fear no evil with you by my side, your shepherd's staff to comfort me. You spread a table before me as my enemies look on. You anoint my head with oil, my cup is more than full. Goodness and love will tend me every day of my life. I will dwell in the house of the Lord as long as I shall live. in memory of the brave souls who perished offering physical and spiritual resistance, not in expectation of conquest, but for the honour and glory of the Jewish people, a candle is lit.
I'm Michael Schwarzbord. This is the story of my father, Jakob, who was born in the Polish city of Łódź in 1921. The youngest of 5 children of a Jewish couple, Blima and Itzhak Schwarzbard, Jakob, now Jack, has told his story in interviews recorded by my wife, Susan Marsden. As a child, he remembered, I had a very happy and good life. Itzhak Schwarzbard was one of Poland's leading painters and decorators, carrying out exclusive work on apartments and churches and the main synagogue in Łódź. Itzhak employed up to 40 men. Many were German, which, as Jack said, helped us during the beginning of the war. They brought us food. In 1940, the Germans forced all Jews to move to Łódź ghetto. Jacques helped his parents with their packing, everything on a small hand wagon. Then I pulled it to the ghetto. As more Jews arrived from Germany and Czechoslovakia, he said, we moved to one room, and my father and I shared the one bed. Blima shared her bed with a German Jewish woman. Heating was from a coil suspended from the light. When Jaak married Ada, they shared one room with her family. In 1944, the Nazis started the final liquidation of the Łódź ghetto. Blima had died, but Jaak, Ada and Itzhak took the last transport to Auschwitz. They never saw each other again. Jaak remembered that we had been separated, one to the left and one to the right. They took him, his father, very quickly to the ovens. Jacques was experienced in building work and said that this is why I escaped from the crematorium to work. I tried to be useful to them. He was never sick, but his head bears the impress of a rifle butt from a beating given for organising food from the kitchen camp. He said that the work was very hard. We were sometimes treated like beasts. It was not easy to survive. We needed to be really strong and healthy and able to do this kind of work. We just lived day to day, hoping it would be over. But it never seemed to come to an end, and each day was like a year. At war's end, in 1945, the only survivor in his family was his brother Zig, and Jacques joined him in Paris. In 1950, now known as Jacques Schwarzbord, he migrated to Melbourne, where he married Sigrid Malkentin and raised 2 boys, Michael and Peter, and became a developer. He still lives in one of his apartments at the age of 99 now. Some years ago, Jacques concluded his interview by saying that it had been important, in his own words, to build up because we have been starving from one country to another one. Not having a country and a solid base, we never knew whether we would be staying or not. Being on your own here and not having any family, we need to support ourselves. And this has been our purpose in life. I have a country here, a country of my own, Australia.
In memory of all those men, women and children who have no one else to remember them or say Kaddish for them, whose very names have been erased, but whose memory lives on in our hearts and in our thoughts. For them, a candle is lit.
My name is Nicola Hall. It's my pleasure to speak on behalf of Jeff Miners. The Jews were not the only victims of the Nazi regime. Millions were persecuted on account of their ethnicity, political convictions, religious beliefs, social behaviour, and sexual preferences. The diverse victim group included Sinti and Roma people, pejoratively referred to as gypsies, political opponents and resistance fighters, people with disabilities, gay German men, Afro-Germans, Jehovah's Witnesses, Slavic people, in particularly forced labourers, and Soviet prisoners of war. Classified as racially, socially, and physically defective, these people were labelled enemies and security risks. The Enabling Act of the 23rd of March 1933 abolished civil and human rights and targeted these groups for persecution and murder. The Adelaide Holocaust Museum and Andrew Steiner Centre honours the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust and millions of other victims of Nazism. The museum reflects the necessity to nurture human rights to prevent such atrocities in the future. On November 9, 1938, a two-day pogrom began during which the Nazis burned more than 1,400 synagogues and Jewish institutions in Germany and Austria on Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass. This evening, as part of the March of the Living global initiative, Let There Be Light, we invite you all to keep your lights on tonight as a symbol of solidarity and mutual commitment in the shared battle against anti-Semitism, racism, hatred, and intolerance.
And now together we pray Psalm 130. From the depths I call to you. Lord, hear my cry. Catch the sound of my voice, raised up, pleading. I trust in God's word. I trust in the Lord. More than centuries for dawn, I watch for the Lord. I trust in God's word. I trust in the Lord.
יש בול ארץ ירוז ציון, אלו עפר חושן, חגרו שקים, הורידו לארץ ראשן, בתולות ירושלים. כלות בדמעות עיניי, חמר מחומי, נשפך לארץ כבדי, על שבר בתמיר, בעטף עולל ויונק, ברחובות קריה. בהשתפך נפשם אל חיק מותם. מה ידך, מה המלך, עבד ירושלים, מה שלך ואנחמך, בתולת בת ציון, כי גדול קיים, שברך מפלך.
From the Shoah, we learn that when we deny humanity in others, we destroy humanity within ourselves. When we reject the human and the holy in any neighbour's soul, then we unleash the beast and the barbaric in our own heart. And since the Shoah, we pray that if the time has not yet dawned when we can all proclaim our faith in God, then let us all admit, at least, that we are not gods ourselves. If we cannot see the face of God in others, then let us see at least a face as human as our own. Down the generations, the Holy Scriptures teach that life might be a blessing or a curse. The choice is in our hands.
Eternal God, we are thankful for the selfless heroism of those who endangered their own lives to save the lives of others. In the midst of intolerance and hatred, they were able to recognise the truth that all human beings are created in your image. We find ourselves in a time when this truth is increasingly forgotten. May we find strength in the example of those who affirmed the humanity of others, even at great personal risk. May their courage inspire us to stand up for welcome and love. And let us say, Amen.
If you can do so without difficulty, I invite you to rise.
El male rachamim shochen bamromim hamtze menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina b'malot kedoshim otoim kezohar rakia mazirim לנשמות כל אחינו בני ישראל שנטבחו בשואה, אנשים, נשים וטף, שנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנהרגו, שמסרו את נפשם על קידוש השם. בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם, אנא בעל הרחמים, הצתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור חיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבותיהם, ונאמר אמן.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, whose radiance is like the heavens. To the souls of all the men, women and children of the house of Israel who were slaughtered, strangled and burned in the Shoah, may they rest in peace. Master of mercy, may they find eternal shelter beneath your sheltering wings, and may their souls be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is their portion. May they rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
May you, who are the source of mercy, shelter them beneath your wings eternally, and bind their souls among the living, and may they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. And now, I invite Andrew Steiner from the Bet Shalom community and Barbara Rottenberg from the Catholic Diocesan Offices to bring together forward this candle of hope and place it in the midst of the other candles. And as they do this, the choir will sing Oseh Shalom.
Oh
In the presence of this candle of hope, and before we go our separate ways, let us offer to each other a choice for life and a sign of reconciliation. Turn to those around you, and with a sign of friendship, wish one another shalom, peace. The bonds of love and affection between the Catholic community and the Jewish community go a long way back. When I first came here in May, I was met by Bishop O'Kelly and the Vicar General, Philip Marshall. And we met in a street called Bar Smith. And I remembered also how the affection, I think it was the Solomon family, had for Mary MacKillop. And in her distress, she found great comfort. Well, it's not just the name of a TV series, A Place to Call Home, but what tonight celebrates in so many ways is the fact that all of us need a space to feel safe, a space to call home. And certainly my experience tonight is that. So a quick few thank yous to our Governor who had other functions to attend, but I'm delighted that our Ambassador was able to stay with us. Thank you. To all the other invited guests who have joined us since the launch, the wonderful experience of the Adelaide Holocaust Museum and Andrew Steiner Education Centre. Again, I've just arrived very recently, but hearing the marvellous story is very encouraging. But I know, having been involved in many projects myself, these things just don't happen. It's the vision, it's being drawn, it's responding to all sorts of setbacks. So thank you to them for their vision, courage, and vision. To our wonderful choir over there, I'm wondering when the CD's coming out, but the Beit Shalom Synagogue and Choir, thank you very much for transporting us, as music always does, into the deeper realm with each other, but also of ourselves. And to all those who have joined us in the live stream, any interstate travellers that may be here, our own Office of Worship and Archdiocesan Events group, who are the cement that make sure all the things that happen so beautifully. And to you all of us value the importance of memory and story and song and prayer, because great things can happen when we allow that prayer to mould us together. So thank you for your presence and participation here tonight.
And now our Archbishop and Rabbi Shoshona will lead us out of the church. And I would just remind you that the museum will be open to the public from November the 17th, and you can visit the website to book during restrictions. And now would you join as we sing together? Bless the Lord, my soul.